There comes a moment in some people's lives where observation becomes unavoidable. Not observation of the world, observation of themselves. And I don't mean the performance version, not the social media version, and not the personality people reward, not the survival identity. I mean the uncomfortable version. The version that sits quietly and starts asking, why do I react like that? Why do I keep repeating this? Where did this behaviour come from? And is this actually me? Or is this something I learned? Right? See, most people spend their lives observing everybody except themselves. They study partners. They study politics. They study celebrities, strangers, enemies. But very few people develop the ability to sit quietly enough to observe their own behavioural patterns honestly. Because the hardest person to observe clearly is yourself. Self-awareness sounds beautiful in theory until it starts removing excuses. That's when people realise awareness is not just illumination. You know, it's confrontation. Because once you start seeing yourself clearly, certain narratives begin collapsing. You begin noticing the emotional loops, the defensiveness, the avoidance, the people pleasing, the validation seeking, the performance, the fear, and Christ, the conditioning. And slowly, you start realising something deeply uncomfortable. A large percentage of your reactions were never consciously chosen. They were trained into you. They were trained into you. Most human beings inherit behavioural architecture before they ever develop independent thought. From childhood, the nervous system is constantly learning. What gains approval? What creates safety? What avoids rejection? What gets love withdrawn? What earns validation? And what triggers punishment? And over time, adaptation becomes identity. That's the frightening part. Many people are not living consciously. They are living through accumulated conditioning patterns that become or became automatic. Repeated enough times, a reaction stops feeling programmed. It starts feeling like personality. The angry person thinks, that's just who I am. The anxious person thinks, that's just my nature. The avoidant person thinks, that's just how I deal with things. But often, these are survival responses that became normalised through repetition. And most people never stop long enough to investigate them. Because observation requires stillness. And stillness is dangerous to an unconscious identity. Silence exposes things. Distraction protects them. This is why many people stay permanently stimulated. Noise. Do it myself, scrolling. Entertainment. Chaos, drama, not so much. Reaction, not so much. Opinion, less so. Conflict, try not to. Because constant external stimulation prevents internal observation. If somebody never slows down, they never have to meet themselves. But eventually, life has a way of forcing reflection onto certain people. Usually, admittedly, sadly, through pain, loss in all of its forms, burnout, heartbreak, fear, exhaustion, humiliation, failure, near collapse. Suddenly the old identity stops functioning properly. And that's when observation begins. Not because somebody wanted enlightenment, but because survival demanded honesty. There's a very strange grief that appears when you start seeing your own conditioning clearly, because you begin realising how much of your life was reactive, how much behaviour was fear-based, how much energy was spent managing perception, how many decisions were made from insecurity rather than truth. And that can be painful. That can be painful. Very painful. especially when you realise some of the things you judged in others also existed inside yourself. That's real self-awareness, not performance spirituality, not intellectual philosophy. That's observation without self-deception. And the strange thing is, the more honestly somebody observes themselves, the quieter they become. Because awareness humbles you. You stop feeling intellectually superior. You stop feeling emotionally righteous. You stop needing to win every conversation. Because you start recognising how complex human behaviour actually is. You realise people are shaped by wounds, conditioning, fear, the environment, nervous system adaptation, childhood reinforcement and social programming, and accumulated survival experiences, including you. Awareness changes the relationship you have with your own reactions. You begin noticing the space between trigger and response. And that space changes everything. Because inside that space, choice becomes possible. Most people think freedom means doing whatever they feel. But emotional impulsivity is not freedom. It's automation. Real freedom begins when observation interrupts unconscious behaviour. When somebody can say, I feel anger, but I don't need to become it. I feel fear, but I can still observe clearly. I feel emotion, but emotion does not need to control the entire nervous system. That's the shift. Not perfection. Observation. And once somebody starts seeing themselves clearly, life changes permanently. Because certain forms of awareness cannot be reversed. You cannot unsee your own patterns once they've become visible. You cannot fully return to unconsciousness after honest observation. And that process, while painful, may be one of the most important experiences a human being can go through. Because the person capable of observing themselves honestly is no longer completely controlled by unconscious conditioning. And that may be where real change begins.